Hello, my name is Kevin Higgins, and welcome to another episode of I Helped Make That. So, there are movies that critics love and become box office hits. There are movies that critics hate and become box office hits. There are movies that critics hate and don't become box office hits. There are movies that critics hate, don't become box office hits, but then find their audience on video. And today we are going to talk about such a movie with our guest, Patrick Bristow. But before we do, Patrick.
Yes.
Have you ever wanted to create your own podcast?
I had never thought about it until I was looking at the Anchor website, and it looked so easy, and they provide everything. I was kind of like going, well, maybe I should. I don't know what it would be about, but I didn't realize that it would be so easy.
Yeah, right. I mean, you just create an account and then you can be on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, all the platforms. It's just it's easy like that.
If I figure out what my podcast would be about, maybe I will do one.
All right. So yeah, everyone, you want to create your own podcast? Try Anchor today, okay? And now that we are done talking about Anchor, let's talk about Showgirls.
Yes.
So Patrick, tell me, how was the casting process behind Showgirls?
Well, the casting process was much like any other film or TV project I ever auditioned for. You get the appointment, they send you some materials, you prepare it, you go to some office somewhere, there's people sitting across the office from you. And when I read the material, I thought I thought the dialogue was odd. And I thought the story seemed kind of familiar, if, in terms of plot points. But I went, okay, let's go try it. Also, I hadn't done that much prior to this, and I was excited to even be auditioning for a Paul Verhoeven film. So I went in, did my audition, tried to play it close to the vest because mostly what I was doing at the time was sitcoms. So I was kind of calibrated for that broader performance approach. And after I did the reading, Paul says to me, goes, so what do you think of this word, Ginchi, in the script? And I said to him, I go, well, I think it's kind of antiquated. My mom was a dancer back in the 40s, and she said, yeah, she goes, I think it was kind of a vulgar term for nervous. And he goes, okay. And then he goes, would a choreographer say this? Would a choreographer say that were in the, giving me lines from the dialogue? And I said, probably not. There was a line that said, twist the turn, twist it. And I was like, nah, I think they'd tell you to spot and complete the suit and new at the very last second, or something. It would be a little bit more mechanical. So he seemed to like that. And I think it was like a month later, without any other callbacks or any other auditions, I got the word that I'd booked it. So I was pretty excited.
Nice. So you said you were excited to be in a Paul Verhoeven film. Were you a fan of his previous work?
Well, I think the only one I had seen was Veronica Voss. And I hadn't seen Spetters or Soldier of Orange. But I knew of his reputation, and of course I'd seen Basic Instinct, I think, and I knew that was a big hit. It was the same team that brought you that, so I thought, well, this is A-list, this is exciting. So yeah, my expectations were up and my hopes were high.
Yeah, that's the thing. People thought this was going to be the next Basic Instinct at the time because Basic Instinct, as as I'm sure people your age are aware, but some of the younger listeners might not be, was like a hugely controversial movie at the time. especially for
Yeah.
its content. But even though it was controversial and got criticism, it ended up being a huge box office hit. And people thought lightning was going to strike twice, especially when Showgirls got that NC-17 rating.
Uh-huh.
But then when the movie came out, the reviews were terrible. How did that?
Yep.
So, how did that make you feel?
Well, I wasn't completely surprised. You
Mhm.
know, from the moment I noticed oddities in the script to when we got the shooting draft, and then I was on set and actually shooting things and seeing how it was all going. I I was like, oh boy, this feels like a graphic novel. This is so exaggerated and so heightened. Um, but I kept telling myself, they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing.
Mhm.
And so it wasn't a surprise. It was an unpleasant outcome, but it wasn't a surprise. Also, the reviews came out the day after I had been to the premiere, so I'd seen the final product the night before. And my husband and I were watching the premiere, and we were seated just a few rows in front of the entire creative team, and we were just aghast early on from the film. We started kind of holding hands, like, well, let's see what happens. We were almost breaking each other's fingers during it because we're like, oh no, no, oh no, at different moments. We didn't go to the after party. We got our car and we went straight home. And I think I gave the souvenir program from the premiere, my copy of it, to the driver.
Mhm.
And we were just like, what the hell? So it was not a surprise the next morning.
Right. So, so back to when you were on set. Tell me a little bit about that. Like, even though you knew that the script didn't seem to be the greatest, and it just seemed like something was off. Like, how was it actually working on the movie not despite having to perform a script you didn't entirely believe?
It was exciting. It was fun. It was my first, part of any size in a, a large, well budgeted feature. So it had all that excitement. There were people in the cast like, Gina Gershon and oh God, I'm blanking on his name, Alan. Da, 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 da.
Kyle
Right.
MacLachlan.
Oh, Kyle, of course, and,
Mhm.
and a bunch of other people that I had seen on things and liked, and they were all really nice, on set.
Mhm.
Um, uh, you know, it it was a dichotomy because you had this feeling of we're on a big ass Hollywood movie set, and then also doing these scenes and going, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel like a version of reality. It's always heightened at some level, but this really feels broader and bigger. And I had a couple moments where my red flags went crazy.
Right. So you said that, despite, you having these red flags, the actors were still nice. And even though you were a little unsure of how the creatives were handling things,
Hmm.
how would you say Paul Verhoeven and Joe Esterhazy were like as people?
Well, you know what? I don't recall that I ever met Joe.
Oh.
Yeah. So I don't have any take on that. Paul, was generally in a good, happy mood. His humor was a little bit pervy.
Mhm.
um, but that was kind of the mood on the set. And I got along well with him. I think there was one point where he got frustrated with me. Actually two, where I was saying, like, this line is problematic. And he goes, well, what would you say? And then he brings the choreographer over and some of the other actors that had been dancers. I said, I think it'd be something more like this. And nobody had my back. They were all just being really quiet, just looking at me. And I'm like going, guys, you know, this is ridiculous. And so we got some lines changed, but he got a little frustrated, like, oh, here you come again. You know, but I was basing it on the audition when he was asking me my opinion. And there were definitely lines in there that did not, and moments that did not feel like, in my experience at least, a choreographer speaking, on how rehearsals go.
Mm-hmm.
The thrust it thing was insane. In my original audition, I just leaned against the wall, and as if I was trying to keep the dancers in time, I was just going, and thrust it, thrust it, thrust it, again, thrust it, good, stay on the beat. That was the audition. Then I get on set and he's telling me, okay, you're gonna come over here and be yelling, thrust it, right in her face and slapping her ass. And I'm like, okay, all right. Well, that's news to me. And I thought, do I say something here? And at that point I was kind of like on notice, like, no, don't say anything, be a good soldier. And I looked over at offset, and one of the actors was Glenn, was looking at me and shaking his head kind of gently, like, don't do it, don't do it. And I kind of gave him like the, what are my choices kind of gesture, like I have to. And so we did like probably like 17 takes of that. And Paul was just always going, more dynamic, more dynamic. And I'm thinking, if I am any more dynamic, you know, I'm it's going to be Mommy Dearest. And it kind of was.
I think, you know, after watching the film again last night to help prepare for this interview,
Yeah.
the other movies of Paul's I've seen have been RoboCop, Total Recall, and Starship Troopers, which are like these big action movies that I wouldn't say are dumb because they have some social commentary to them.
Sure.
But because they are like these huge action movies, like his over-the-top style works for them.
Right.
What I think was Showgirls' problem is that it's a more down-to-earth story, and his over-the-top style just doesn't really work with that type of story.
Right. Agreed.
Yeah,
you know, at least not this time. It didn't. Maybe he could do that, but I don't think it's what he's attracted to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it needed more like someone like Martin Scorsese, or the guy who directed Saturday Night Fever. Like, I think they would have been more like better fits for the material or that type of story.
Yeah, well, you know, if you think of the story just in its barest bones, it's kind of an innocence and experience story, you know. Even though she's a hustler before she gets there, you know, it is still kind of like, you know, country Rube goes to the big city. You know, I think back to Hawthorne's My Kinsman Major Molyneux, you know. Of course, I don't think anyone's ever compared Showgirls to that, but that would require really focusing on the conflicts and the contradictions of the journey of your protagonist. And everyone was painted in such broad strokes. I recall one moment I wanted to, when I was dismissing the dancers in the audition scene, the understudy audition scene, with just about 4 of them that are wanting to replace Crystal or be her understudy. When I was dismissing them, he wanted me to be really curt about it. And I said, you know, I would have worked with these dancers for, in some cases, years. I know them, you know. And as much as a bitch as I might be during rehearsals and stuff like that, I think there'd be just a little bit of like, thank you for coming in. You know, like, I understand. I know you're disappointed. Just chill. Your time will come. Having a little bit of that in there. And I did get to do that, but it's, you know, 50 feet away from the camera in the background of other dialogue. So moments of unexpected humanity weren't really encouraged, or I don't think recognized.
Yeah, and I think that's another problem, is that there's no humanity, or not much.
Not much.
yeah, like Nomi Malone is an asshole from the beginning of the movie, from like second one.
Yeah.
So when she has a downfall, it's like it doesn't feel like there's any tragedy going on, because it's like she was already this way
Yeah,
from when we met
exactly.
her.
So, right. So when Crystal's treating her like shit and playing head games with her, it's kind of like you don't care. And I think, if you ever meet Elizabeth Berkley in person, she's so effusive and wonderful. And I don't, she's like this Disney creature. I mean, she's just like so sweet and so nice. And some of that actually tries to come through in the performance, but again, it wasn't encouraged. I don't think it was allowed, and I don't think in editing, if they had options of certain takes or certain coverage, that they would have gone for that. They went for the more dynamic. um yeah, it would have been interesting to see like that story in different hands.
Yeah, that is definitely true. Like, have you seen Hustlers?
No.
All right. Well, I think that is kind of the movie Showgirls tried to be.
Yeah.
Um, and I think the reason for that is I believe it actually was directed by a woman, but it stars J-Lo, but there is more of that, female understanding in Hustlers, which is a
Okay.
movie about strippers. Than there was in Showgirls, and it's said, yeah, the director
Well,
was Lorene Scafaria.
okay.
Um, and because of that, I think there's more, it feels like a more truthful version of the story Showgirls thought it was telling.
Well, Showgirls is all from the page to the film. It's all male gaze and male assumptions, and yeah, and not the best of. So it's a fantasy from a specific type of male perspective.
Yeah, it definitely is. But saying that, it did get a huge following amongst the
Yeah.
LGBT crowd, which is funny because they were trying to promote it towards straight men and ended up not actually meeting that target demographic, and then got the opposite one. What do you think of that?
It's lucky it got anything, and that it is a quote camp classic, but I have issues with that. Is probably the best you could do. There are tons of movies out there, as you well know, that
Mhm.
didn't make it in the box office, didn't make it with audiences, didn't make it with critics, per your opening statement, and they're forgotten. And some of them have big names in them, and
Mhm.
they go off into obscurity.
Yeah, like
So
striptease.
yeah, or a movie with Meryl Streep and Liam Neeson. I think it was called Now and Then or Before and After or something like that. Came out
Mhm.
around the same time as Showgirls. It's like it's got cred, but it's like no one remembers it.
Yeah,
It just kind of,
definitely.
it's kind of meh, move on.
Mhm.
So at least Showgirls didn't get the meh, move on. And actually, when people call it the worst film time, I love that. And when a new film comes out, like when The Room came out, I was like, and they were going, it's the worst film of all time. I was like, well, I'll be the judge of that. Wait a minute, just hold your horses. I'm a little defensive about our title.
Yeah, definitely. So when did you find out that Showgirls got this cult status?
Oh, it was growing within the first week, because as it was still being covered, like, oh, that thing flopped last week, but there are midnight showings happening. I think that happened pretty quickly. And I went to the Beverly Center to see a movie about a week or two after Showgirls opened, and I ran into, I'm going to be name dropping guy here. I ran into Mink Stoll, and she comes up. She goes, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." And I said, "What?" And she goes, "Thank you for Showgirls." I said, "Well, you're welcome." And she said she and John Waters, were just loving seeing it. So I thought, well, It's going to have some sort of following, not the intended one, as you said, and not with the intended effect. It's an accidental comedy.
Yeah, it definitely is. So knowing the reputation it has now, did it affect your career in any way? Do you think?
Yeah, probably in some ways that I'm not even aware of. I'm sure there were some times where they were discussing like, well, who's going to play, Tom in this film? And if I was on the long list or even on a short list, somebody might have gone like, did you
Mhm.
see him in Showgirls? Yeah, pass. So I'm sure there were opportunities that were lost because of it, at least in the immediate aftermath. Again, I wouldn't know about that. But it is also the best conversation piece on my resume. If anyone is looking through my IMDb or whatever, it's the one that's going to get questions. It's the one that's going to start a conversation
And
more so
yes,
than a lot
and
of other things.
yeah, and everyone, this is a guy who's been in Austin Powers and Barb and Starringly.
Yeah, I got
Mhm.
other things to talk about, but people love to talk about Showgirls, which I'm fine with. I think it's fun.
Mhm.
So at the end of the day, I don't think it hurt me in any significant way. And if it did, so be it. I mean, that's just, that's life. But it has actually given me some great opportunities. I've gone to some events. It's allowed me to go to some great events, meet wonderful people like Josh Grinnell in San Francisco, whose drag alter ego Peaches Christ used to do these live Showgirls stage shows before screenings of the film, and so it has led to other really fun people, fun moments, fun experiences.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. Although one person who I read didn't have as positive an experience was unfortunately Elizabeth herself. Like
Oh well, she got thrown under the bus in a
I
bad way.
know. Yeah,
Terrible.
yeah, like I'll admit I didn't enjoy her performance, but I don't think her agent should have fired her for it.
No, and I don't think she should have shouldered the blame, because at the end of the day, you can look at everything that you might not like about her performance and go, that is direction. There's somebody supposed to be watching on monitor who, after a take like that, goes, hey, we need to dial that back. Hey, beat the French fries up a little bit less. Maybe just bite one, as opposed to throw them everywhere. But she was encouraged, like the rest of us were, to be more dynamic, encouraged to be more dynamic. So, you know, then when it all went south, it was really unfortunate that that they let her take it on the chin. So unfortunate, and so not so ungracious to a young actor.
Yeah, like she was just trying to get past Saved by the Bell,
Well,
you
and
know?
she was doing what she was told, like a good soldier. She's a delightful person, very open, very vulnerable. I loved her in First Wives Club, and I thought she
Mhm.
was great in Curse of the Jade Scorpion. She and I actually ended up doing like a kind of a B movie later. I had one scene in a film that she was a lead playing a detective in, and we almost couldn't get through our very heavy scene because we were giggling so much, just like we're like puppies reunited after having been separated. um
Mhm.
so we were laughing too much in a what should have been a serious scene. We got through it, but the director was kind of like, oh my god, what you guys, what is wrong with you? She's a love, she's an absolute delight.
Yeah, but thankfully I read that she has actually embraced the film as well.
Yeah.
Um, like she went to a screening recently, and have you ever run into her at like fan events
um
or screens?
No, no. The only time I ran into her was when we were working on that film Detonator. But I know that she went to a screening at Hollywood Forever Cemetery a few summers back, and spoke to the crowd and everything like that. And they were over the moon that she was there. And So yeah, she's owned, but I expect her in the early years to have owned it, because if I were her, I probably would have quit the business only because of the PTSD of how I was treated. Not film not doing well, not even the bad reviews. People recover from that, but the being left to the wolves.
That really was.
Yeah.
Although, just out of curiosity, now that we live in a post Me Too world, do you think it would have been any different if the movie came out today?
Well, I think if that movie came out today, written as it is, shot as it is, edited as it is, it would be way more vilified.
Mm-hmm.
It would kind of like, come on, do better, you know better, but the I think the exploitive aspects of it, and there are many, um, they lived in the mid 90s there, and hopefully that was the beginning of their death rattle. But yeah, there are moments in there that are just gratuitous, absolutely gratuitous. They're gratuitous. There's no reason that we need to be seeing what we're seeing, and so it really feels like that male gaze kind of, I need to take a shower after this kind of feel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, true, though. Some like top filmmakers have actually come to its defense.
Hmm.
Not surprisingly, Quentin Tarantino,
Right. Yes.
but also Jim Jarmusch, Adam
Uh-huh.
McKay, and Jacques Rivette. Um, so what do you think about their reevaluations? Have you heard what they?
I have not, but I can look at the piece and go, okay, from a shot composition standpoint, from a storytelling standpoint, the bones are all there, and
Mhm.
there are some really great shots, and its look is really cool much of the
Yes,
time,
I
but
agree.
so you have to reconcile some really good craft with some iffy, if not downright wrong, um, uh, depiction and point of view issues.
Hmm. Yeah. So, yes, saying that some of these critics have said that it is actually a satire. Um, what are your thoughts on that?
Uh, I kind of don't believe it was intentionally that way.
Hmm.
Um, maybe, I mean, I think Paul definitely has a sense of humor, and I think he had a sense of humor with this, but I think at the same time, it wasn't. I don't think he and Joe were thinking satire.
Hmm.
I maybe they were, but I didn't see it. It was taken too seriously. It was marketed too seriously. It was, this is going to change everything. Even in different departments on the set were saying this is going to change Vegas. Do you know that? I'm like, really? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's going to change the look of the shows, the choreography, everything. I'm
Hmm.
like, oh, okay. So we're talking about it being important
Hmm.
before we're done.
Yes, I was not afraid, and I think that probably that was also the reason why the people wanted to finance it. They said even if we would run into problems in the United States, the rest of the world will not really disagree with this movie.
Well, I was actually talking to a friend about this movie the other yesterday, and he said that like modern day Vegas was pretty much shaped by the 90s. So there was kind of a bit of a Vegas obsession, which is why they might have said that. In fact, there were two other movies set in Vegas in
Right.
1995
Casino.
and Leaving Las Vegas.
Ah, right.
Yeah, so I think that's why they might have thought that this movie would actually like change Vegas because
Yeah, and and I'm sure there have been some homages to Showgirls in other shows there and stuff like that. Maybe the motorcycle dominatrix look with the bob and banged wigs, or whatever. Um, One thing I always found kind of weird was, like, you had this fictitious review called Got It, and it featured a star dancer, Crystal Connors. I'm like, has there ever been anything like that in Vegas where a dancer was like the attraction, the star of a review? I don't know.
I wouldn't know either because I've never been.
Yeah.
All
Yeah, I
right.
find Vegas is problematic for me. You know, I can go there, have a good time, but like if I'm there more than about 30 hours, I start getting depressed because you just it's such sensory overload, and so many people are just pouring money into things that they maybe shouldn't. I don't know. I'm a little prim.
Yeah, actually, didn't you literally film in Vegas?
They filmed a lot of exteriors in Vegas. I was not part of that. The showroom scenes for the goddess thing with the volcano, and then the number where they're in blue and there's like a church set and everything, that was all shot in Lake Tahoe at Harvey's Resort in their showroom. The backstage stuff, all the dressing room scenes and everything like that, and the Cheetah Club interior were shot in Los Angeles on a sound. And the big house, Kyle MacLachlan's house, where it's the big opening night party, that was a mansion out in Malibu.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, anyway, I think that's the end of the interview. Thank you so much, Patrick, for coming on.
Oh, sure. My pleasure.
Yeah. Do you have anything left to plug?
No, I don't have anything to plug at the moment. But I'm really flattered and grateful that you wanted to spend some time with me talking about the best conversation piece on my resume.
All right. Well, everyone, that was I Helped Make That with our lovely guest, Patrick Bristow. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.